created a rough time for them. And how did Paul respond during that rough time?
He continued praying and listening to the guidance of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Even when he was, yeah.
What else did he do?
He also held on to his, like, being a Roman citizen, so
yeah.
But
before he did that, he wasn't just praying. What was he actually doing? Did he just go, oh, okay, I'll just cop it? Did he just say, oh, yeah, I probably was a bad person, so I did a few wrong things, so maybe I deserve it? How did he respond?
No.
What did he do? What did he do, Helen?
So he gave his testimony.
Yeah.
Is that what you're looking for? And, and gave an explanation as to who he was and why he had the authority that he had.
Right, that he had authority. It's pretty arrogant guy, isn't he? Some people might say, oh, that's pretty arrogant. What gives you the authority to speak like that?
Oh, you're cutting out. You probably said something really important too.
Did I cut out? I just say, like, it's arrogant. It could be perceived to be arrogant. He's just like, what? I missed
what you said.
Oh, did you? Okay. I'm recording it too, so we'll be able to, like, I'll edit out the bits again that are dodgy, so you'll be able to hear the lines.
And he was arrogant. What did you say after that?
I was just saying that he could appear to be arrogant, because he's speaking with such authority. He's actually standing up to the officials and the people around him. He's not just going, oh, okay, I'm going to cop it. He's actually standing and speaking back, with authority. And I just think of an example, or just think of an example where we've done something that we felt was right, and then that we were kicked back because of it, or there's been people that have not liked what we've done. And because I just think when you follow the Holy Spirit, this stuff is going to happen all the time. We're always going to be confronting existing cultures. And the thing about existing cultures is that there are power brokers within that culture. And there are people within that culture that have a lot to gain from that culture. So when we're challenging that culture, then it's going to make people angry. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Can you think of an example in your setting where you've stood up for something right and how you've been treated?
I can speak into this. I was in a meeting last week where a particular officer said that he couldn't wait for the doors of his church to be open to worship, and that we just needed to get back into worshipping together. And the Bible says, don't be in the habit of not meeting together. And I sort of said, well, I'm done with church. People are not exactly flocking to our doors to line up and worship with us, and we're moving much more into discipling. And I got a little bit of a dressing down would be the word I would use.
Oh, wow. This is great. I'm really interested. Tell me what happened next.
And just put back in my box, and I didn't eat humble pie. That isn't the word that I would use. I just came away from the encounter feeling, well, they're not really going to understand what I'm about. That's how I handled it in the end. I got off from the Zoom meeting and I thought they're not really going to understand, what I'm about. So
right.
I left him politely to his view.
So you didn't explain to him what you're about?
I didn't really have a chance, because people who really want to hang on to the way things are have a tendency to interject and interrupt. So, you know, and I really wasn't in a fighting moment, but I wasn't in a fighting mood. So, but I did find.
I'm not judging what you did.
Mm.
I'm not judging what you did at all. I'm just looking at this text, tonight. I hope it encourages you in the position that you take. And I hope that it inspires you, because that is a perfect example. That is an absolute perfect example of how this text is going to be played out today. Like, yeah. And
Yeah.
how people will not understand. People did not understand. They could not comprehend that this guy, you know, he had been wanting to kill Jews, and now he's wanting to destroy the temple in a such, like, as in leaving that theology behind and moving forward. You know, now he was the sacrilegious person.
Yes.
He was the leader in that space of maintaining that culture. And now they want to kill him because he's been transformed so much. So thinking about that meeting, how is that relevant to you?
I guess in a way, I'm not rocking the boat intentionally. I think I'm just going against the grade, and just by doing what I'm doing, without actually having to be arrogant about it, I'm questioning in a way what they're about.
No, but there we go. We jump straight back, don't we? We jump straight back to assume that it's arrogant. And people will probably say, oh, that's arrogant, or that's sacrilegious, or how can you possibly say that? How can those words come out of your mouth? Because what their belief is, which is a true belief, their belief is being challenged and confronted. And what I take from this text is that Paul is so prepared because his life has been transformed. And he's so full of the Holy Spirit because he believes that he is where he's meant to be. All he's doing is speaking that truth. This is my truth. You know, I used to have church. You know, we used to be part of this. Like I've said that recently. I used to be a bandmaster. I used to have all these groups of people and Bible studies and different things, and lead church services, worship services, contemporary, traditional, all these things. I used to do all those things, but this now is my reality. And then to be able to voice that out, I don't think that's arrogant. I think it's actually the reality. You have to speak the truth of what God is doing, and the truth speaks for itself. The fruit of that speaks for itself. So if thinking of that context, if you didn't get a word, what did they say? What was let's think about some of the things that they actually said in response to what you said.
You're talking with the text now, yes?
No, I'm talking about your example.
I think what happens with me, I get the subtle, you're not an officer. Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't actually directly say it, but the sort of the eye rolling kind of thing happens. So
You're different.
I'm different. Yeah. And by what authority in that sense do you have? Because you haven't been to training college and you haven't Now that's not openly stated. It's done just in the whole eye rolling.
Yeah.
And I find it fascinating that when you get into these accounts, they quote scripture left, right, and centre. Not that I argue against it, because chances are that they probably have got a theology degree that's 4 years beyond where I'm at, basically. But it is interesting. I mean, I was expecting it, but not right away. So that's, you know.
That's so great. Well, I want to encourage you and affirm you in your decision and in the reality of where you are. I really want to encourage you in that, because this is going to happen a lot. It's going to happen a lot, and especially initially, so we have a choice to make. We have a choice. We have a choice to be quiet. I think of Pope, the current Pope.
Yeah.
Okay. He's a really good example if you want to do some research on him. He was a person who lived through all the child kidnapping back in Argentina, and there's all these things that happened when he was a priest, and he was criticized often because he didn't actually speak up much against what was going on in the towns that he was looking out for. He was just quiet. He didn't say anything. So people didn't really know what his opinion was, which is different to this here.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden he gets put into this position where he's now the Pope, and the reality of everything he believes is now being lived out in this powerful position, and it just put the cat amongst the pigeons. Yeah. So that's kind of like the Trojan horse model. And what I see Paul is doing is he's speaking truth all the time. And I'm not saying one's better than the other, and I'm not judging one way of doing it. And I'm not saying, again, what you said was right or wrong. I'm just saying that's where we're at that time. But what I want to encourage you in is that I think that Paul was so bold because he knew that God was with him. He knew that experience that he had was so genuine that he could not go back to life as he knew it.
Yes.
And I want to affirm that with you, because that's your reality.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's your story. Yeah. And we need to expect that we're going to get that criticism.
Yeah.
So that sounded like a bit of a negative, but out of that experience that you had, was there any positives that came out of that?
Yeah, look, I suppose for me, it just, I'm probably, we've chosen this direction and we have to continue on, was just the feeling that I had. And the other thing that I had to accept the fact that that came through loud and clear, you may not be understood, but you still got to move ahead anyway. And I think that Paul in this text recognizes the fact that, he's not going to be understood really.
Yeah.
But he still has to stand firm for what he believes in. Like you were saying before, that life has changed for him and he still has to press in and press on, if you know what I mean. Like you turn a corner, you can't go back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to do it by faith, because you don't always have we have a part of the vision, but we don't have it completed. Does that make sense?
This is great, Helen.
That's just what I feel in this text, that he's had this incredible encounter and he understands that he's going to get persecuted, but he has to go down that road anyway. He has no choice really.
Wow. This is good. This is really good.
Yeah.
But it's not like, oh, I have to die, is it? It's not like, oh yeah, I'm just going to be a martyr. It's not like that. This is my reality. God, you are so good. How can I turn away from what you're doing in my life? Like this, I cannot refute that this is you that's moving me along. So it's not so much a choice to go, oh, I'm just going to die and suffer, and it's actually, no, this is right. This is the life-giving way. This is a way that lets go of everything that entangles us and actually brings Jesus right into the heart of what we're about. So
I think it's interesting that he waits. I mean, that's what struck me. He waits until they stretch him out to flog him before he actually challenges him. Like, look, hey guys, is it legal for you to flog a Roman citizen who hasn't even been found guilty? I find that fascinating that he actually waits right until then.
What are you thinking? Tell me what you're thinking about it. Why is it?
I guess if I'm honest about it, for everything that he's gone through, I just know my personality. I would have been squealing, hey, look, don't touch me, I'm a Roman citizen, long before they laid me out and stretched me out and flogged me, That's what I'm, you know.
Yeah.
I don't see myself as brave as him. Let's put it that way.
He had a big advantage to start off with, wasn't he? Like he had military upbringing, plus he was brought up in the temple, so
Yeah.
he had a lot of discipline that he was prepared for that position. But I believe that you are brave and that you are just as disciplined and that you can do things like this as well. But I really love how he's so secure in who he is because of Jesus. I don't know whether it was an intentional plan. It could be because of his military training. It could have been like military upbringing. It could have been that, he was intentionally doing this. But it's like this ultimate act of nonviolent resistance, isn't it? Where he's like, if I can hang in here as long as possible, this is going to make them look so bad. And it's almost like it's planned for him. And then it shows who is the aggressor.
Yeah.
Who is the person that is the aggressor? Who is the person that is actually in the wrong? It's a beautiful, like, to learn the art of nonviolent resistance. I think every follower of Jesus needs to learn it, because it's staying. For example, think of some modern ways of nonviolent resistance. Think of something that slaps the system in the face, or the system tries to break you or correct you from doing the right thing. Think about that today. What are some other examples? So your example is a good one. So they're trying to say, no, that's not the right way. We need to go back to this. But what are the consequences of going back to this? Think about that. What's the consequences of going back to what we know? What are the consequences relationally, community-wise?
Probably it stalls, it falters in some way, because it's a little bit like, as human beings, we don't always like change, do we? So we tend to repeatedly do that thing without being successful, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It declines. It just doesn't. It's not working.
Yeah.
But we hang on to those because we just don't know what else to do half the time.
Excellent. I think you've hit the nail on the head, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
Hit the nail on the head. People don't know what to do, so we go back to what we know, because that's what people have done all the time. And it's I guess that gives us a sense of self importance, or confidence that at least we know this way works. It's like, or a person might walk through the door and go, oh, see, this does work. We've got one new person, or 5 new people, so it must be working. Yeah, it's funny. It's so funny, Helen. I've chatted with 3 lots of officers in the last week, including you, because you're an officer, and yeah, they've all said they're closing their Sunday services. And it's not to be smart, it's not to be arrogant, it's just, this is what God is saying. And because of the practical reasons, people genuinely want to connect, and we want to work with those people who genuinely want to connect. They're all saying the same. Because they're putting all this energy into stuff that's not important.
Yeah.
Well, not fruitful. It's not that it's not important, because it can be important, but it's not as fruitful. Wow, that's amazing. So how is this text going to change your modus operandi?
Okay, well, I suppose, and I can't speak for anybody else, but I suppose it just sort of stands out that you must persevere, even when there is opposition, if you truly believe that this is of God.
Right.
That's probably what I get out of this.
Yeah.
And to, if God's in it, he's in it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah. That's great. And what, I think coming back to that aggressor side, if God is in it, you'll see who the aggressor is. Who the person is, who is actually tyrannical figure that wants to just destroy or oppress you. Because if we are arrogantly saying your way is wrong, that's awful, then we're no different to them, really. But it's actually going, no, this is the way. This is the way. This is why it's the way, and this is what God has been doing. This is how He's changed my life. My Paul tells that rational story. I was on the way. He stopped me. He changed my mind. And he proves how God had set it all up by bringing Ananias into the story. So Ananias is the witness that, yes, something great's happened. And then he goes on to testify and give his account. And I think that is, if you read that, it's not that amazing, really. He's actually just testifying to what God has done. It sounds amazing, but really God has done all of those things, and he's just saying what God is doing.
Yeah.
And that's where the authority comes, is because he's not making up this story. It's actually God doing it. So I think that's where the boldness will come in, is because we know that God is the one that is driving this. We're surfing this wave, and the surge that's behind us is of God.
Yeah.
You still there, Camilla?
Yes, still here listening.
Is it cut up a lot?
No, it's been good actually.
Okay, that's good. Excellent. Oh, Jenny, you still there? You still on my messenger?
I'm still around.
She's got the ABC on, so she's still there. I can hear her. She's good. Yeah, all right. Anyone else got any examples or thoughts about this text? BJ, Bethany, got any thoughts about Paul and his actions?
Just that I think sometimes when we speak up for minority groups, know-it-alls spit back facts, but facts go both ways, and facts can be manipulated.
Yeah. Yeah, they can. Especially those old texts that are brought out to justify thinking or justify behavior. Yes. So, yeah. Anything else? Because if we think about how we're going to apply this in our everyday practice, I speak to you, BJ and Bethany, because you know what's happened for me this week. Or BJ, you were there when we had that incident this week, and I would just say that I had to do something this week where I had to stand up for what I believed in, and I had to speak on behalf of a minority group in a way that I felt I needed to. And there was, I'm really glad that I did what I did, and I got some pushback saying, we're a big system, we can't change straight away, we may not change. But then I was surprised, because through it all I got a really great response from someone who then went on to say how actually they too were pushing for this thing that I was on, that I was standing up for, and kind of just said, which is what I was wanting from them really, was the affirmation that what I was saying was being heard. To be able to say, there's a situation, this needs to change, and we need to do something. And they actually said, I hear you, I agree with you, we are working on this area too, but you must understand we're in a very big organisation, an international organisation, and I said, I don't really want to use that as an excuse, but they weren't using that as an excuse. They were just saying, we hear you, we're on that journey with you. And that was powerful for me, and it was what I needed, because yeah, because I was getting a bit irate about it in myself, and I really wanted to stress that point that things needed to change at that time. And if I had got a status quo response, I was going to be escalating my response, and I didn't get a status quo response. I was really happy about that. It wasn't, didn't go where I was hoping it would go, but they actually gave me a response which appeased my emotions, which was great. So excellent. So I thank God for that. But yeah, we have to stand up for those things that are wrong, or the things that society might allow, or even as an organisation, the things that we might allow within our organisation, any organisation, or the communities we might find ourselves in. But we have an opportunity to come alongside and confront those rules of injustice. The greatest analogy, which we've discussed before, is the civil rights movement and the racism. So the racism within towns. So the church is organised for African Americans to go and sit in the white cafes, knowing full well that there was going to be kickback and even violence. But they were taught not to respond in violence, to be dignified. And they were taught and well organised that when you do, if they do respond in violence, to let them do it, but protect yourself and get out as quick as possible. So they would go into these restaurants and they would arrange to have, they didn't, I don't know whether they arranged officially straight away, but there was film cameras out on the streets that then captured these white people that started to punch and abuse the African Americans within the restaurants. And it showed the nation who the aggressor was. And I think that's a great example of being able to go, you don't need to actually say anything against them, because that they will prove their actions themselves. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we can think about all different analogies of where that would sit. But if we are called to do something that is right in God's eyes, we need to expect that there will be a kickback from the people around us, where that behaviour could be classed as illegal or completely inappropriate. And then we have to do it, expecting the consequence. And when the consequence comes, to actually take the consequence on the chin. So this week, an influential person, I posted about it on Facebook, had passed away, David Pawson, a Reverend David Pawson. And I wrote to him when I was wrestling with some issues in the training college. And the reason I wrote to him is because he's a voice that had been prominent in my reality, because of tapes I'd listened to and things that I'd been reading, that I wanted to actually get his opinion on what to do, rather than actually read Acts and see that I didn't need his opinion, but it was great to get it. So I wrote to him and I just said, I've got this issue. The issue was actually about baptism. So water baptism, because I was going, you know what, maybe we should be doing this water baptism thing. And I wasn't that, I'm not fussed at the moment about it, but I wrote to him, and then he wrote back to me and he said, you have to listen to Jesus and do what he says, obviously. And he says to stay in the organisation until you're asked to leave was the most profound part that actually got me. So he said to honour the organisation, to honour your leaders, but to be obedient to what it is he asks us to do. So like that person you met that we were having that conversation with, we still be nice to them, we still be kind to them, but we just be obedient to what we do. And if there's kickback, then this is the right thing to do. And I think there's no actual specific way of responding other than letting the Holy Spirit take control of our lives, because we're all going to respond differently. And if the Holy Spirit is guiding us, he will give us ears to hear and he'll give us the words to say, and in that moment, it'll come out perfectly, as it did with Paul. And as I felt we had this situation this week, I felt it was helpful, and I was really trusting that the Holy Spirit was guiding that, because it's not a selfish thing. We're not driving it out of our own ambition. We're driving it out of what God is doing in us. Yeah. Great. What about you, Camilla? Or Blake? Are you there, Blake?
I'm here.
Quite enjoying just listening tonight.
Hey?
I'm quite enjoying just listening tonight.
Hey, great.
But I do like chapter 22, verse 17. After I returned to Jerusalem, I was praying in the temple and fell into a trance, and I saw a vision of Jesus saying to me, "Hurry, leave Jerusalem, for the people who accept your testimony about me." And I just love the fact that you can have still visions of Jesus and the confidence that he had to be able to speak and do the things that he did.
Yeah, I love that, Camilla. I really love it. But you know, that same verse could have been used by Paul as a spiritually abusive tool, couldn't it? You know, if he made up that story, if he made that up, he has just fully abused those people that were listening to him, right?
Yeah.
He's fully just told those religious leaders that Jesus says to get stuffed. And that, if that's not real, then that's spiritual abuse, right? But out of the reality of what was happening, he was speaking truth. That's why it can't be fake. Because if we're fake when we do this mission work, then we're just going to create heaps of problems, and people won't trust us, and they'll go, "This guy's a troublemaker." But in they'll see the fruit of that will drop away, will fade away, will just disappear because we are a fraud. So yes, we get these beautiful visions of Jesus, but I also see here that what a testimony, what a testimony of encouragement for Paul, that Jesus is actually telling him to leave this place that is
Exactly.
amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing that this is my home. God, this is God's home in the eyes of those people, and he's saying, go away from here, because they won't accept your testimony. That's great. Thanks for pointing that out, Camilla. And the trance. I was praying in the temple. And the irony of that, he was actually in the temple. He was actually in the temple, and he was told to leave. You're in the temple, Helen.
Okay.
And that reality that you're experiencing, I think we need to take that on board. This is not a new thing. We have to expect this resistance, and we have to be smart. We have to be smart in how we maneuver through this. And if we are just arrogant and pig-headed, like people think that we are, then we'll fall flat on our face. But if we are actually following Jesus, then we will not fall flat on our face, and Jesus will actually get all the glory. There you go, Angel. It's a big tidal wave. That was awesome. Excellent. Brilliant. So how are we going to apply this to our lives tonight? What about you, BJ? I would love to hear what you're going to say.
Who?
You.
I just say it anyway.
You just say it anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be along the same lines of, like, I'll often have things mulling over in my mind and won't say them till afterwards when I'm at home with BJ, and it's just times when I realise I probably just should have said it then and there. But yeah, so not letting fear of the reaction stop me from holding to my truths in moments. So
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I like that, Bethany. That's good.
Yeah, it's really good. And I think it's like flexing that muscle. Like when I look at Martin Luther King Jr., and just before he got shot, he was seen to be so arrogant because he was so confident in who he was. You know, he was not afraid. He'd been on marches. He'd had people try to kill him before. He'd had all these things happen to him, but he was just following Jesus. And I actually met his daughter, Bernice King, at the Atlanta Congress. And just to hear how her life was transformed by the reality of her father, and to actually say, her words were, it's not about appointing, it's not about being appointed, it's about being anointed. And to hear her say that, and to say, my father was anointed by God to do this work, and no one could refute it. Yeah, no one could refute that God was on his words. You read through all his sermons, you read through his letters of resistance, and God oozes out of it. You can see that God's hand was all over it. And even his death, you know, the timing of his death, and around the time of JFK, God's hand was all over it. And yeah, I just think if this is a beautiful thing when it's done out of what God initiates. But if we're just trying to contrive stuff for the sake of being controversial, then it's not going to end well for us. I don't think we're going to get in the bus. Yeah, excellent. So Helen, I want to encourage you, and you know, through listening to what you said before, is actual proof to me that you're following the Holy Spirit. Because most people probably would have quit at that point or go, oh yeah, you know, why bother?
Well, it hasn't been out without. It hasn't, you know, it hasn't been without its fear and trepidation and doubts in the middle of the night. You know, so you know, it's not. Nothing is an easy path, is it really?
But I think
the
model that the example I'm modeling to you is now what you need to do to other people.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
The powerful thing that Paul did and Barnabas was affirmed.
Yeah.
Affirmed those beautiful people who were out there by themselves, whether it was in Antioch or different places, like to actually affirm them and say, you know, what God is doing in you is beautiful and real and genuine, and you need to follow that and trust that, because without that affirmation, it's very lonely. So, and I had some great mentors, I've told you before, that I still have those great mentors. They still speak into my life. But that having those people around us that support us, whether it's a spiritual director, a clinical supervisor, or just a friend, or, you know, people that are practitioners that have walked down the road, having those people around us, not the yes men, not the yes people that just tell us what we want to hear, but the actual people that understand the journey that we're on. And I think I look at Paul's journey now in a different light, being a practitioner, and go, oh wow, what an example he is. And we have to shine bright. You know, I know there are other people in South Australia that think like you. And I know there's people in other states that think like you, but many of them are held bondage by the fear that they won't be able to break out of it, or whatever the reason is, you know, the fear that it's not worth it, or, you know, whatever. So I just want to encourage you, because it may seem like nothing. It may seem like what you're doing is not even really making a difference. You've got this nice little small group, but I want to affirm to you that out of that beautiful small nucleus, something amazing is going to be birthed, and we're excited to be journeying with you and to be able to see that. And yeah, because it's so good.
The interesting thing that you said before regarding Martin Luther, I feel like I've gone back in time there.
Yeah.
He had a counterpart, Malcolm X. Do you
Yes.
remember that?
Yeah.
Who pretty much had the same message, but he was more for could be no assimilation. That the blacks needed to be
It's a great pickup. Yep.
violent. Okay. But
Yep.
the interesting thing you said about where his daughter said that Martin Luther King was anointed.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they equally had both big followings, but nobody really remembers who Malcolm X is in comparison to Martin Luther King.
He gets a lot of criticism now too, doesn't he, Malcolm X? He's like,
He does.
Let's not mention Malcolm X.
Yeah. All right. Okay. But
But in history, that's kind of how people treat him now. It's like Malcolm X.
That's right. And the other thing that I just wanted to say on Martin Luther was the fact that the night before he died, he actually made that I've been to the mountaintop, and
Yes.
I've been to the mountaintop,
Manifest.
and I may not be traveling with you.
Yeah.
And the very next day he was shot.
Yeah.
So he was very prophetic in some of the things that he had to say.
Yeah. And
it's
a modern case study. It really is. It's a modern case study on Paul, and also just nonviolent resistance. And I think we can learn so much from that story. And it's so moving. Everything he writes, even when he's in jail in Birmingham, Alabama, and the stuff he writes, he's like, we can't stop now. We have to keep going. And I think that only comes out of the reality of God in our lives. Right?
Can I just ask a question, because you've got younger members here? When I spoke to my kids about Martin Luther, they didn't actually know who he was really. They had some sort of vague idea, So I'm just wondering what's the equivalent, what these young ones here, and I'm probably referring to Bethany and Blake here, who do they see as their heroes of faith now? I'm just curious. Because Martin Luther was sort of back in the 60s, wasn't he?
60s, yeah.
Great question. I do know enough about Martin Luther, and he's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's good.
All right, no worries. All right.
Do you have anyone?
No, I just I read a fact. It doesn't answer your question, but it's just an interesting fact that Anne Frank was born at the same year as Martin Luther.
Oh, okay.
And they're both activists in their own right.
Yep.
One started as a teenager and one died. Well, they both died, but it's just an interesting fact I read today that were the same year.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Doesn't help, doesn't it?
No, that's okay. Because Martin Luther was also greatly influenced by Gandhi as well.
Yeah.
He actually travelled to India and spoke with Gandhi. Yep. You might want to pick that up, Peter. I won't.
No, I was just going to say Gandhi loved Jesus. He just didn't like his followers. Gandhi was a big nonviolent resistor, and he modelled that too. And there's videos on YouTube you can watch about that.
Yeah. And Churchill didn't like Gandhi either.
No.
Yeah.
No,
it's interesting when you go back. There's sort of key figures that come out in history.
Yeah.
That break through, and I'm just wondering who their contemporaries are right now.
Yeah. There would be so many right now. I'm just trying, but there may not be as obvious as. It's hard to tell right now because it's in line of history, isn't it? So
yes, yeah.
It may not be so obvious now because they don't stand out so much now, but it'll be in the future where people go, oh yeah, there was those people.
Yeah, and I sit with every 6 months or every year I've met a new person that I'm like, I want to learn about their life and their story. I feel like my idol changes frequently, and I don't know what will be what I've held to when I'm, looking back one day. So
there's that girl that was in Pakistan who stood up for education. How she got shot. And
she speaks for women.
And then there's Greta Thunberg and things like that. But I wouldn't. Yeah. Again, in the light of history, they are activists, but whether or not that's the same kind of activists that we're talking about here, but at the end of the day, it's not for me to judge. But yeah, but certainly what was beautiful about Martin Luther King was that it was just so connected into church and to the reality of, because it was the church that drove it. You know, the church, and that transformation came. I'd like to think that what we're doing would be looked on in years that we're actually at the obedience about what we're doing, and with reconciliation, and as in Australia, I'd like to see that all of us involved in this movement in Australia is huge, would be something that would be looked on as going, this is, and it's not for anything other than God is allowed to work. I think the Pope, like I said, the Pope is probably another one for me, that today he's a non-violent resistor who's just blown people out of the water. But but history will tell. History will tell. All right. Anything else?
No.
Great. Who are we going to share this with? Who do we know who needs the encouragement of this?
Oh. Probably for me, that'll be the little tiny discipleship group that sort of now meets on a Sunday that have just been ripped out of, both these two men they've got a very solid background in other churches, from Anglican to Pentecostal to, ones that die in the wool Lutheran, if you know what I mean, and then all, as while as they're excited to come on, the journey, I don't think it's without any, oh my goodness, I don't think it's without any fear and trepidation. So I probably never looked at this reading before in light of what we're trying to achieve, but I might go back and discuss what we've talked about tonight with them.
Yeah, excellent.
So they're the two people that I need to be constantly speaking to, and coming. It's all right. We're all going to survive this.
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably encouraging me to produce some kind of resource just to put on social media, probably not to be shared as in not like a big campaign or anything, but just so it's out there. Just would be tips. It's probably already out there, but tips on expecting the resistance, and to probably even speak to my mentors and to get some of their examples. I know that Neil Cole is part of the Grace Brethren Church, and he's never this is not a secret, it's a public, he said this himself, it's on public record, but he has never really been accepted by his own organization, and because of him being so controversial in the fact that what he's modeling is so different to their denomination, that they just never really welcomed him. And it was only a few years ago, after being in the organization for 30 years or something, they asked him to speak at a national conference of Grace Brethren, where they've started to recognize that what he's done, the significance of his legacy. And so, and again, he wasn't doing it to be recognized, but the fact is that what he's doing is amazing and cutting edge, and going along on that journey, to expect that we will not be recognized, to expect that we will be lonely, to expect that we will be misunderstood, and to expect we will get resistance, and people, you're not going to choose to do that if you're not genuinely engaged in it. Like even this week when I had this conversation, I'm like, mate, I could quite gladly go fishing and not have this conversation with you. What do I gain from having this conversation other than I'm giving you an earache, And so I said, I'm saying this because I believe it. I'm saying it because it's the right thing to do. And I'm saying it because we're discriminating against people unnecessarily. And so out of that, let's hope change comes. But yeah.
The interesting thing that I just picked up your voice was that you became passionate. I have no idea what you're talking about because you haven't alluded to it, but
I'm
the
not
fact
being
is,
specific because I'm recording it.
yeah, okay, I understand that, but I can hear the passion about it, and I think that that's a key point. You have to be passionate about it.
And that's when I read this text of Paul now, I put that passion into that text, because that's the only way I can read that text now. Because if he wasn't passionate about what he was saying, then he was a fraud. And the same with Jesus. You know, if he wasn't passionate about what he was saying, then I can't read that, because I'm like, no, because they're testifying to what God is doing.
Yes.
And they are bold enough to follow him. And they are the ones that should be followed. And I think that's where you look back on history and you go, wow, where are those people? Where are those people? And Paul and Lydia, and I wish there was more texts from women that were produced throughout the years, because I reckon that Lydia in Antioch, she would have been a fire lady, and Priscilla and Aquila, I reckon they would have had some amazing conversations. But yeah, it's good. Excellent. Anything else to say, Camilla or Jenny? Who's Jenny? I'm just showing you. Oh, hang on. Can you see Helen? There you go.
Hi.
You're on mute. You're on mute. There you go. So, and then you can't see Blake or Camilla. They're hiding. Camilla must be in her jammies.
Yes, I am in my jammies.
Hey, I'm in my jammies. Can you see who's on my jammies?
Is that Star Wars?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, fortunately they don't make the onesie.
What's encouraging about Paul is the fact he's had the vision and he's had the light and all that, and I think having that relationship with Christ gave him that confidence and that arrogance about to move forward and do what he did and get the results that he did. And I think when you know you've got that confidence and you know that God is with you, you know Jesus is with you, you can move your mountains.
Richard, sister, move your mountains. That's great.
So that's what I like about what we're reading, the fact that he knew that God was with him, and that's why he was able to do what he did. Yeah,
it's so good. But I think when I come back to the Pope, I think of the Pope's example is that the strategy behind what he's done, whether it was intentional or not, was that he blew people out of the water once he got to that position. Because if he had been passionate and full on all the way up, people would have gone, no, we're not going to put him into that position. That was his fear. So he's kind of expressed that there was an intentional strategy of remaining quiet so he could actually get to that position and then let the reality come out. I'm not that smart. I'm just going to be obedient on the path, and then and let's let God guide it. And I think along the way, God does it all. And then there's a testimony there that out of the weakness, out of the vulnerability, out of the brokenness, we are used and chosen by God to do things that people wouldn't have imagined. So yeah, excellent.
So true, so true.
Thank you, God, for a beautiful day. Thank you for Jenny, who's sitting there. I can't hear you, Jenny. You must have muted yourself. But I can. Yeah, I love it when you do that. I love that. The frustrated. I love it too. All right. We'll speak to you soon. Hopefully, you can join us next time. Look, it says that you're waiting to get in, Jenny. You're still awaiting to get in, and I've accepted you in multiple times. So, look, admit you again. I've watched that. What's the bet you come in now?
And Sue sent me a text message wondering if how's it all going? That whether
Yeah, I'll give her a call. I'll give her a call after this and tell her that.
But you're trying, yeah.
I've no idea why it's not working. But yeah.
That's what I texted her back saying that
Right.
you've got.
And then tomorrow it's going to be a good day. Tomorrow's going to be a great day. So we're going to have a fun day. And catching up with Blake tomorrow. And then unfortunately we have to go fishing. All right. So
it'll be fun.
it'll be good. It'll be great. The weather's perfect tomorrow.
What are you going to go and catch?
Probably a cold, but we'll see. We'll try and get some flathead or some pinky salmon or something. Try and get something. Yeah. So, yeah. We'll have Blake. He's a professional fisherman, so we'll be right. All right. See you soon, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And,
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Pete.
Bye.
We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
All right. How do
Bye,
I
Pete.
see you soon? Take care.
See you tomorrow.
Take care, Blake. Just can't wait.